Thank you to everybody who drove here in the rain. And thank you to all of you who showed up here on a Sunday morning. Chris, you inspired me to retell the story that I told you earlier, but I think it's an important story about Big Indian. Blanche and I joined Rudy in a caravan, with 2 cars, maybe 3, to go explore this new property in upstate New York that he wanted to establish so his teacher, Muktananda, would have a place to teach on the weekends and during the week, even when he was visiting America. It was a big gift to his teacher and a big gift to all of us who were Rudy's students. But we drove up to this decrepit hotel in upstate New York, and I looked at it and I just said, oh my God, this is going to be so much work. And Rudy looked at it and said, oh my God, this is going to be so much work. It was a completely different attitude. He saw it as a blessing. I saw it as, oh, yeah. I'm not built for this at all. But we all started working there, and we started transforming this decrepit hotel into a very livable space. It's gone on and had a long history, more than I'm going to talk about here. But the story I want to share is about, it's called the Puja. And the Puja is a Hindu, maybe Buddhist ceremony, fire ceremony. We dug this massive hole in the ground, I mean massive, went collecting dead trees and branches and everything from all over the property and put it in the hole. And then, because it was a very Hindu moment in our lives, we started chanting and marching around the perimeter of this big hole and set the whole trees, all the wood on fire. So it's really burning and it's getting dark at night. And I'm not totally used to sort of formalities and rituals. I'm not always a believer in that, but we just started doing it. And so I went, okay. And all of a sudden, these guys started taking their shirts off and throwing them in the fire. And I'm going, I am not taking my shirt off and throwing it in the fire. I wouldn't do that to other people. I wouldn't do it to myself. So I just said, well, maybe I'll throw my socks in the fire. So I took off what were really a beautiful pair of socks, and I threw them in the fire, but they only landed in the edge of the ditch, not far enough that I could get them out, but not anywhere where they would burn. So it was a useless loss of my socks. And I was really unhappy about it. And we keep walking, and I'm going, what am I doing here? This is crazy. And all of a sudden it starts to rain. And I'm going, this is so awful. I mean, a fire, a puja, and rain. And this is like, what a curse, basically. And I kept walking and the rain stopped and I'm drenched. And then it starts raining again. And I'm going, it doesn't get better. and the rain stopped. And I go, okay, and I'm freezing cold. And we're walking around and the rain comes again. And I go, what are we doing? And then the rain ends and we're finished. The fire slowly goes out. And I'm walking back to the ashram, and there is a woman named Draupadi, who was a very big disciple of Muktananda, who had come to be with us to teach us Indian chanting. And she's sitting on the porch steps and she's sobbing. And I'm going, what's wrong? What's the problem? And she goes, you don't understand. You don't understand. And I'm going, no, I don't. She said, in India, when they do a dedication puja, which is what this was, a puja that is truly blessed, it will rain 3 times. That never happens. So people walk around with jars of water to spray on the fire in order to create the experience of rain. But she said, this is the first time in her life that she's ever even heard of where it truly rained 3 times on the puja. And for me, it was an astounding lesson, because what felt like punishment or curse or something was a blessing. And most of us don't know blessings. We only know the discomforts that life throws at us that we think are in some ways punishment or something that is making us work harder or whatever it is, whatever your mind interprets these events to be. But I had no clue. I was truly clueless. But at that moment, I understood this was a blessing. And I was talking to Chris and Amy and Bob, who are unbelievable caretakers at Big Indian. They are there all the time. And George, Cheryl, there are people who go up there with a kind of, we'll call it religious, although it's more spiritual sort of drive. And Bob mows the lawns up there with now a broken lawnmower. We all, by the way, you all help pay for that lawnmower. It may have to pay for a repair. But Amy plants around it. There's cleaning that goes on. Chris is going to repaint the stupa, which is another part of the area. I bring it all up because when I go to visit Big Indian, which is not as often as everybody else, Blanche and I go up there and we sit down at Rudy's shrine, and there is Shaktipat. There is energy. I don't know how to explain that because there's a statue sitting there. Rudy's ashes, but it's a statue. And why there is an energy transmission from an innate object, I cannot explain. Why there is blessing from rain pouring on a fire, I cannot explain. I just know that there are very few places in the world, and I've probably shared this with you before, that I have felt were, in a way, transformative spaces, that they were somehow not quite of the earth. One of them, Sarnath in India, where Buddha gave his first lecture. I remember going there for the first time and feeling my feet were not touching the ground. I'd never had that experience before. I had this experience in Bodh Gaya where Buddha had his enlightenment. It was the same exact thing, just like this is not of the earth on some level. There's a place that Rudy had spoken of once to me called the Glastonbury Tor in England, which is very Arthurian. And when I had gone there with Blanche and my family, again, I went, oh, this is it's not the earth that we know. It just doesn't have that feel to it. And I get like, I've been introduced to holy ground, if you will, if that's what you want to call it. And certainly going to Big Indian has that feeling. And then forgive me for making this very personal, but walking into this room for some reason has also a element of not exactly of this world. It's something else. It was a gift, a place of transcendent stillness or energy that is available to anyone who wants it. Big Indian being very close, this being relatively close. You can go to India, you can go to England, but all I can tell you is finding the transformative spaces is one of the great gifts in the world. On the other hand, the space that you are in right now, if you are sitting in the right place inside, meaning just open and available, is also holy ground. And it feels the same way. It is not physical necessarily. I mean, it manifests within your body, but there is holy ground in every human being, and not everybody feels it. Not everybody is aware of it. Not everybody's experiencing the unbelievable gift, blessing of their life. They're experiencing the rain pouring on the flames. And the incredible thing about stopping and sitting still and going deep, knocking and letting it open, asking and receiving, that dynamic in a human being opens your doorway into something that allows you to see one, holy ground wherever you are, and true blessing wherever you are. The tutoring that came to me from outside was very powerful. When I was in India, I had never heard of this inner space. I had an LSD experience that certainly blasted me out of the norm of my life. But in Sarnath, when I first stepped on that ground in that area, it's the first time I was like, oh. But really, in meeting Rudy and in having Shaktipat presented to me and to Blanche and to all these people I loved, I saw holy ground rising up. It just rises up, and it is available in every human being. And the hardest part for me in life is watching people who, the first drop of rain on the fire, run to cover, who walk into Sarnath and go, oh, yeah, beautiful, goodbye. Life is not to be just photographed. It's not just to be looked at. It's not just to be dealt with in whatever way that you deal with it. It's to be open to. It's to be absorbed. It's to become an opportunity to go deeply into the source of your experience, and then to go back into the materialized world and let the two merge back and forth, and to feel holy ground in every space that you enter. Every space. This is a day-to-day living experience. And I talk about it all the time because most people I know outside of this particular very lucky group of people have no clue. Just nothing. They have what I would call hope for the future, but no idea that the rain is a blessing, that the moment of this moment is a blessing. And by blessing, I mean it's a manifestation of the what is. And if you go deep inside, you go, wow, wow. I described last week walking, I think I described it to a comic book store with my granddaughter, Talia, and on the walking, she just reached out and took my hand. And since she was 5, that hasn't happened. I don't know why she took my hand, but it was like this, what I call grace note, that was so beautiful, so exquisite. And then as we walked out of the comic book store, and Blanche and I were going back to our car, again, I said this last week, there was hail and rain and thunderstorms, and we were totally drenched again. So I had just had this moment of total exquisite beauty with my granddaughter that just radiated everywhere. And then the universe poured on me. And the blessing for me was the puja in Big Indian, because I realized, don't make this anything but an enormous experience of blessing, that you're being drenched by God or by life or whatever you want to call it. This is not a bad thing. It's not something to be going, oh, why me? And, oh, and I got to run and hide. And we just got drenched, and we had to change our whole day accordingly. We were going to go shopping, but we were so wet. And all I can tell you is our mind is programmed for a certain kind of judgment of everything that happens. And it's like good and bad, okay, mediocre, wonderful, terrible. It's none of those things. It's none of those things. It's all what is. And if you really get to a place of honoring what is, you stop categorizing life and you start living life. You start experiencing life as it is. And you try deeply as you can to see it as blessing and not disturbance and curse. And I tell you this because we are in a very changeable time. We're aware, politically, environmentally, and socially, in every which way, the norms are different. And trying to get back to norm, which is called comfort for most people, is considered the blessed state. And the discomforts that we go through around us are called the cursed states. But it's your mind. It's just your mind. Your mind has built a conditional space in which pleasure and joy and all that stuff is God loving you, and the other is not being loved. Not true. Simply not true. You need to let go. You need to let go of the idea that one thing is a blessing and one is a curse. It's all part of the totality. The totality is amazing. And then to go into my personal biology of things, this getting old thing, in which the norm of the body, which you take for granted as will always be the same thing, starts at a certain point in life to have no normalcy. So the environment that you live in, not just outside, which is getting to be very wacky and strange and complicated, but the environment that you live inside, in your body and in your mind, starts to be as wacky as the outside. And you have no predictability. You don't know day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, what you're going to be dealing with. I've never really been there before. My middle life was all pretty predictable. You know, I slept usually good, say 8 hours, woke up feeling great, had my day, had good things, bad things. It was, you know, there was a predictable cycle to it. Now, none of that. I don't know minute to minute what this inner landscape is going to look like. And I don't have a guide post or telling me, you know, tomorrow morning, the weather inside will be this and predictably that, and then there's going to be thunderstorms. I don't have any of that. I just wake up and go, whoa. And then it changes. It just changes and changes and changes. And it's half the time it's very sweet and really like, oh, this is wonderful. I mean, I woke up the other day and I said, hey, I have nothing to do today. And I felt like a 4-year-old. There are other days where I wake up with nothing to do and I go, you know, the whole world is like, it's too big a canvas. I don't know how to fill it. But what I'm learning to do, as I've described before, is find this space of neutrality, which goes, okay, just be. And it is years and years of training with Rudy that allows me in the stillness of that to find a way into this space inside that most of the time allows me to see the wonder of my own existence. And I go, phew. And as I've described, and forgive me because this is going to be the kind of talk you're going to hear from now on, there are times where I lie down or sit down and I am really in stress. There's really bottoming out drama happening inside my body. My heart is falling apart. My brain is mushy. I mean, one thing after another. And I don't know exactly how to handle it. But the only thing I know is, okay, there's a muscle. Do that. Ask for help. Ask for help to surrender. And as I've said, week by week, it works. It truly works. And I don't know what other muscle people have. You can call it prayer, maybe, reaching out for something. You can call it, you know, get me my meds, get me my alcohol, whatever it is you might kind of go to. But I'm telling you, the spiritual journey really becomes essential, not a gift exactly when you get old. It is all you've got. And either you have become strong enough inside to use that muscle and become a powerhouse of capacity, or you will be a victim of the uncertainty of everything around you and inside you. So part of what motivates me to keep this class going and to have me speak week by week is the idea of implanting the seeds, trimming the growing bushes, or whatever it is that turns you into capable powerhouses of capacity to open, touch this space inside yourself and be nurtured by, protected by, and loved by who it is you already are. It's a strange muscle because you can't, it's not like lifting, 100 pounds, although it could feel like that. It's gentle and it's like, but it's like that over and over and over. And I cannot tell you how essential and important it is. If I'm not around at some point, I would love to have this video or whatever is available as a reminder that just says, go here, Be that innocent, tiny little baby that just has this unbelievable instinct to go, okay. And as I've talked about a lot in recent weeks, that infantile being, that little child in you that is so unformed and so unready for the world, it knows how to find peace even when it's hungry, even when it's crying, even when it wants to be held. It knows you will not always be held by the outer world. You will not always find peace in the outer world. But if you sit quietly, you will find that peace right here, right here. That's the amazement. That's the amazement of the spiritual journey, that it never has left us. We leave it. We've gone on our worldly journey and totally forget that this beautiful, comforting being that we are is right here now. And if you ask for it to remove the barriers and to show itself, it will. It just will. And what you will experience is why you were born, who you are, what this is for, the joy and the beauty and the mystery and the lack of understanding and the hope of the future and the willingness to give up hope and just be in the present. All of this stuff starts to come in and circulates around for you, and you end up in a state of childlike awareness, and I'll call it wonder and bliss, but it doesn't absolve you of rainstorms on the fire. The rainstorms are going to come. You will find yourself in discomfort. You will find yourself in and over your head with life experience. And trust me, if you get to a certain point in life, that's happening all the time. All you've got is this. Take a breath, ask inside for help to surrender. And that holy ground that exists in Big Indian, that exists in Sarnath, that exists in Bodh Gaya, that exists in the Glastonbury Tour, it's right here. It's right here. And trust me, it is just as holy and it is just as magical as any of those places. And you're already living in it. You are the conveyor of it. You know, you bring it with you into the drugstore. You bring it with you, any place you go to people's house to visit. Suddenly you become that thing, which if you're bright enough and shiny enough, just lightens the room for everybody, and everybody gets shiny and bright, and everybody feels this thing because you walked in the room with it. And people may not know it was you, and nor do you need any credit for it. All I can say is you become the very thing that makes life holy. You become, and I use the word become as though it's a future tense. You are the very thing that makes life holy. The only difference between you and anybody else is that you have a pathway and a doorway, if you will, to that space, which is not like a billion miles away. It's right here. It's right here. You have a pathway to this space. Now, does that space go deeper? Does it have profound universal depth? Yes. Can you take it to places you've never even imagined? Yes. Will it take you by itself? Yes. And what I have discovered in my day-to-day life, and you may have found this yourselves, I don't know, but it never goes away. It never leaves me. And it's into the most detailed parts of my life. And I've talked about that a lot, but it says, put your toothbrush away. Go get extra toilet paper for the bathroom. It's like the most absurd things, but it makes life work. And it just tells you what to do. And why is it concerned about that stuff? I don't know, but it's who we are and how we work as human beings. We are here to make the world better, to make it work, to make it function, and to make ourselves better and function. And if you need help, you can ask for it. Ask your partner, ask your friend, reach out to somebody, or just be nice to somebody. We got this guy at the supermarket checkout, a couple of people, and you don't even have to ask. They just provide it. They just provide joy over the counter with your receipt, and they give you this beauty kindness and sweetness. And I look at that and I go, it's all it takes. That's all it takes. You can open and take care of the nurturing of the external. And if you want to become universal and you want to become oceanic, you can do that. And every one of you has that power. You may not have the obligation or the feeling of having to do that, but you have the capacity. We're all here to bring people into that flotational space of the oceanic part of our being that supports us and carries us and lets us continue on this journey. So rain or shine, fire or no fire, taking your shirt off or not, socks being thrown into the side of the pit and never being cleaned up or never being burned, doesn't matter. It's just story. It's just story. What matters is there is a blessing that comes with being alive. And if you can touch that blessing and feel the source of that blessing, you will have the life you came here to live. And that's all I can wish for anybody, and I wish for each of you. Any concerns, questions, comments? George.
Bruce?
George, we'll go in line, whoever.
Yeah. I know I had an interesting experience, and I just wanted to ask you, how do you stop your mind from judging? And I sat in a emergency room in Columbia Presbyterian for almost 5 hours, and it's a huge, vast room with hundreds of people coming in. And at first, my mind was repelling everybody. I don't want to get what they have, and they were sick, and I'm sitting there, and 2 junkies sat next to me, and one was in a wheelchair, and it was either a husband, wife, or whatever. And I realized they're just people. You have to have compassion for them. And the next thing I know, they're sort of hugging each other. And I just thought it was wonderful. But how do you stop the judging going on in your mind all the time, the rejection of people?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's incident by incident, really.
I opened up and I just asked to feel compassion, which I did.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like you did it. I mean, I don't know any other way. I mean, I do know take a breath and ask for help, and remember to do that in the face of the noise and the judgment that's in your head. I mean, I ask myself regularly, why am I being assaulted in so many material, physical ways by pain? Something I don't understand and don't want anybody to write me about. But all I can do is go, okay, and take a breath and open, and it's not a problem. It's still there, but it doesn't affect me in the same way. When I see people being terrible to one another, I take a breath and I just try to love them and understand the ignorance that's at play and pray that it will somehow find its path. It's all we can do. I mean, none of us are going to be removed from the kind of fear and suffering that the body experiences. We're just not. We have to take charge of finding a space inside that goes, even this, okay. And what you did and what you experienced was, to me, the perfect example of how it works. You're in an emergency room with people suffering, and yes, illness all around you, and anything that's communicable is problematic. And there you are, and then you see people hugging, and it opens your heart. Boom! What a blessing! I don't know, what more can you say? You know the answers, George. I know you know the answers. You've been around the block many, many times, and but all I can tell you, and this is my experience now, is it gets harder. As you get older, the assaults become more difficult. The problems become more complicated. You don't have as many places to go to get release from it. You have really only one place to go, and you got to remind yourself to go there, which is right here. You do that, it's a possible help. Sometimes it will not be a help. And then, you hang on the cross for a while. That's part of the human drama, and one of the reasons Jesus showed up here, to say, yes, there are times you hang on the cross. And here's what, I mean, again, I do this all the time, but what did Jesus learn on the cross? Is what you learned is sitting in the emergency room. He forgave the people around him for what they were doing. Forgive them, they know not what they do. You looked at the people around you and saw love and connection, and that came in And that turned everything around. It's turning away from yourself that seems to be the great gift, or going deep enough into the source of self where your ego-minded persona is no longer primary. That's a great thing to be able to do. I don't know a lot of people who can do it, but I'm telling you, everyone in this practice is learning how to do it. And when they get to be 80 or whatever, like you and me, they're going to be grateful they did this. They're going to go, wow, it really helps. I got something I can do. Anybody else? There was someone else who, I don't have all of you on screen, so I don't.
Bruce?
Yes.
Hi, it's Kathy. I have a funny little rain story.
Okay.
Many years ago, I was sitting in a park with a friend under a little picnic shelter on a picnic table. It was my birthday, and I was telling her about how Rudy had said a number of times, it's auspicious to be rained on any important occasion. And as I was telling her this, out of a clear blue sky, not a cloud in sight, it began to rain on our little shelter. So I got down and stepped out into the rain, and I saw that the rain was raining only around the shelter for a few feet. So I got out into it and got wet and said, thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, people don't believe stories like that, but I do, and I get them, and I get why it rained on your shelter. I totally get that. You bring that to yourself, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful thing that you step out in the rain and go,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, guys, we're an unusual group of people with the potential to turn, very dark events into opportunities for light. It's an unusual transformative quality that we all have attracted through having learned these sort of practices. So, use it all day long. When the day goes hard, when you start to have problems and you start to kind of wonder, why me, God? Because it's you. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a problem. It's a gift. You'll figure it out. Is that it?
Bruce,
Yeah. Yes.
just wanted to thank you for putting me in touch with some magical moments. My childhood, I lived with my grandparents, a very problematic household. Aunt and uncle and cousins and parents, all in this old house. But my grandmother was there, and she was a magical person, all 6'2" or 4 of her. And she'd say when it was thunder and lightning, let's go sit in the hammock and watch the great show God's putting on. And, so we'd get drenched, but it was absolutely magical. We'd sit out there and sing. And, or she'd say, let's go follow the brook. We'd take off our shoes and walk in our bare feet through the rocky brook. And she made what would have been a very sad, painful childhood into just one of remembering the happy blessings.
It's so interesting because I've been talking.
So thank you for bringing that back to me.
You're very welcome, and thank you for sharing it. One of the things I read this week, which I think has been proven to be really interesting, and I just talked to Jackie about it as well, but this idea of what makes happy older people, or people who live long, contented lives, as opposed to people who have, all the drama and suffering. And they often say it's a difficult childhood, early pain and struggle.
Interesting.
And early pain and struggle builds mechanisms and muscles for a much stronger and much more well-lived life, let's say. And, and when people who go into their 90s still vibrant and vital, it's because of something they learned at the age of 4 or 5. And so even though it may have seemed like the problem of the family was like a curse, in a way, to the degree that I know you and I see this beautiful life unfolding, you have been blessed by that. And it doesn't make life easier necessarily, but it gets it brings this enormity of heartedness into the
I never
world.
heard that before.
I hadn't either. It was in the New York Times, so it's got to be real. Right? So, you know, but it's really you're proof of the pudding. So is Jackie. Actually, there's this extraordinary quality of being when people have struggles early on and have developed mechanisms to live. And again, this kind of teaching is developing mechanisms for people who had early good childhoods. You know, you still need the mechanism. So anyway, thank you all. Lots of love. Be back if all goes well. Who knows? In 2 weeks, probably saying the same thing. So if you want, you can just go watch the old videos. You know. But lots of love to everybody, and thank you for showing up today. And to all of you here. Thank you. Bye.